They grabbed snacks?
Yeah, I already told them to, but no one's got up. I don't know why.
There's some rocks. Can't eat.
Oh, yes, you can.
Okay. Who's sitting here?
Jeff. And I'm just recording from here.
More than this part.
Thank you for coming. I'm done. Bye.
Alright, see you
It's
later.
that easy.
Should I just do one set right?
Yeah, that's good.
Alright. Ready? Everybody? So first off, I just want to thank everyone for coming to my thesis defense. Everyone knows me, so I don't have to do an introduction of who I am, but my name is Zakiya anyway. And so my thesis is the influence of Laramide deformation on the Proterozoic basement in the southern Sangre Cristo Mountains here in New Mexico. So I'm going to go over just a brief outline of what I'm going to do for you guys today. I'm going to introduce my study to you guys, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of the background about the geology of the area. Then I'm going to introduce to you two different Laramide deformation-involved models. And then I'm going to go into some of the methods that I've used to try to test my hypothesis. Then I'm going to show you what I ended up getting in my results, discuss them with you, and then give you some concluding remarks. And questions will be at the end. So first off, Baltz in 1972 mapped a whole bunch of Laramide age structures in the Proterozoic basement in the Paleozoic and Mesozoic strata, and this is in the Gallinas Creek area map that I first looked at. And he has projected a lot of these structures into the basement. However, we don't know if the basement has been ductily deformed by younger deformational events. And there are a lot of studies that focus on this in the cover rocks, but not quite into the basement. So the purpose of my study is to conduct some structural and paleomagnetic tests so that I can determine whether or not Laramide deformation has affected the basement. And I also produced a map of the great unconformity so that we could see where these contacts are that I would be testing near. So my null hypothesis is that basement structures, for the most part, have not been reoriented by younger deformation. And my alternative is that at the Proterozoic, Paleozoic contact, the development of age-specific structures have accommodated much of the Laramide compressive stresses. So with this map right here, you can see that the southern Sangre Cristo Mountains are right here, and Las Vegas and Santa Fe are right there. And so I'm working in the Santa Fe and Las Vegas ranges of the Sangre Cristo Mountains, and this is one of the southernmost parts of the Rocky Mountains. And so basement was deformed by a series of accretion of tectonostratigraphic terrains that were dated about 2 billion years ago, and they lasted for about a 1 billion year continuous orogeny. And one of the latest being the Grenville orogeny, which occurred 1.3 to 0.95 billion years ago. And so in the southwestern United States, there was an abundance of mafic magmatism, and there was regional extension in this area. And this also changed the stress field from compression to extension. And there was continent-continent collision, and this reactivated the crustal boundaries and uplifted from 1.1 to 1.0 billion years ago. So the ancestral Rocky Mountains occurred from 320 to about 270 million years ago. This was a series of intercratonic basement uplifts, and with this we came northwest to south-southeast striking and extensional fault system, as well as thrust faults, folding, and zones of lithospheric weaknesses. And with this, the ancestral Rocky Mountains also reactivated some of the Proterozoic and Cambrian Ordovician crust weaknesses, and this was also later reactivated in the Laramide orogeny. So the Laramide orogeny occurred about 70 to 30 million years ago, and this occurred through low-angle subduction of the Kula and the Farallon plates under the North American plate. And contraction caused a lot of uplift of these basement blocks, and that's key to shallow subduction, especially along steeply dipping reverse faults and folding, which resulted in the overturning of Paleozoic and Mesozoic strata. And what's characteristic about the Laramide orogeny is you have reverse faults that are striking north-south, and these do parallel the mountain range. If you remember from the picture of the Sangre Cristo Mountains, they kind of just come up pretty north-south. And within the Laramide orogeny, a lot of those structures were along zones of weaknesses and were reactivated. And we have the Picris-Pecos fault system, and that's located near the Espanola Basin. And this was actually one of our largest strike-slip fault displacements in the New Mexico area. And this gave about 37 kilometers of displacement during the Cambrian, and was later reactivated during the ancestral Rocky Mountains, the Laramide orogeny, and in the Miocene. And during the Laramide, there was 26 kilometers of right slip during this, and there was north striking high-angle faults that produced a displacement towards the east and the west. So for my study rocks, they're pretty much Proterozoic basement blocks, and they are north trending and west tilted, bounded by northeast trending, west dipping, high-angle reverse faults. And so in the Las Vegas area, I had quartzose-feldspathic gneiss, biblitic gneiss, biotite schist, and granitic pegmatites. And then in the Santa Fe area, I had amphibolite bases, foliated felsic megacristic granite, undeformed mafic granitoids, granitic pegmatites, and small bodies of alkali granite. So this is a map of my field area and all my field sites. I had a total of 17 sites from which I was able to collect some of the rocks for paleomagnetic tests as well as measurements for my structural data. And these ones up here are the Santa Fe area, so along Hyde Park Road towards the Santa Fe Ski Basin. Over here is the Johnson's Mesa area. Over here we have Upper Gallinas and the High Point area, and then down here is the Mineral Hill area. So there are two standing models of Laramide deformation that I have researched into. And the first is vertical uplift bounded by reverse faults. The second is horizontal shortening due to compression. So this map right here is from Eric Erslev, who is one of the authors that I've leaned on. And this gray area right here is the Precambrian basement. And the thicker lines with the arrows at the end are the arch trends, or Laramide arch trends specifically. And so there was a lot of arching Phanerozoic strata, and unconformably overlies the basement. And in this map, you can see that Colorado and Wyoming show evidence of this arching. And this is another map from Erslev, and this one shows primary fault systems, primary and secondary folds, and Precambrian basement exposures. In this one, the basement is the top with the dashed lines. There are faults that dominate in the basement, while folding dominates the Phanerozoic cover. A study by Erslev looked at basement uplifts and unconformity outcrops to test if Laramide has affected the basement rocks. One way this was tested was by documenting foliation attitudes in folding, or in the basement folding. And this is a figure of a lot of Laramide faults, folds, and arches that were recorded in Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, and the New Mexico, Arizona area. And as you can see, in Wyoming, it's more northeast, same with Colorado and Utah, but when we get to New Mexico, it's trending a little bit more south, or north-south.
Those are rose diagrams, right?
Yes. So when the crust undergoes compression, it can deform in several ways. So in Rocky Mountain geology, many faults are modeled by fault propagation folding. And that is where folding is where deformation takes place in front of the fold or a propagating fault surface. And here we can see that the fault goes along a zone of weakness and travels up the footwall ramp to the tip line. And also, this is showing you how there's little deformation occurring in the basement, whereas in these upper crustal rocks, you can see there's folding occurring. And so Urslev, he looked at a whole bunch of Laramide fault propagation folding in the central Rocky Mountains. And those have a lot of broad zones of folding in the upper crustal sections, and they tighten downward into the basement. And this is where the fault zones separate the basement and the upper crustal rocks with very little penetrative deformation. Laramide fault propagation also closely replicates heterogeneous tri-shear geometries, where zones of maximum shear parallel the fault trace bisecting fold limbs. Fault propagation fold is most likely the mechanism for basement curvature based on fold shape and net fault slip relationships, according to Stone. Studies in Colorado and Wyoming show fault propagation fold demonstrates basement folding in Laramide structures is controlled by fault dips. This is said by Urslev and Rogers. And so, as much as we like to say that there's, models can be proven different ways, there's still a lot of questions left as to what happens in the triangular shear zone. And so these questions are not answered. So Urslev in the early 90s developed the tri-shear model, and this is still being tested today. And so tri-shear occurs in the triangular zone, where tri-shear folding occurs in front of a propagating tip. Bump tested the tri-shear model with two hypotheses of Laramide uplifts bound by reverse faults. The first one was formation of faults during Laramide as new features. The second was that previously formed faults were reactivated during the Laramide. He concluded that faults can be reactivated and neoformed in the Laramide, but this would mean that pre-existing weaknesses may be the origin of that initial failure, but not necessarily formed earlier. Urslev and Rogers have studies in Colorado and Wyoming that show tri-shear distribution by narrowing downward of folding towards underlying faults in the triangular shear zone. These models are still being tested today. So for my methods, the first thing that I did was fieldwork and sampling. I had to go and find outcrops using Waltz's map and see where the contact was, the grade and conformity. And with that, I made outcrop descriptions, took structural measurements of strike and dip, cleavage, fractures, and foliations. And then I collected block samples for paleomagnetic testing. And as you can see over there, those are all my samples that I collected. And they also had to be prepped. So I had to draw the orientation that I recorded in the field, as well as core them using the drill. And then I used a rock crusher to crush some of the rocks so that I could run Curie point experiments. So for my paleomagnetic experiments, I did the Curie point, which is a temperature at where ferromagnetic mineral loses its remnant magnetization and behaves like a paramagnetic mineral. And so with that, I used this machine right here to run it. And I also had to record the remnant magnetization of my samples, and we used this machine right here. And I performed alternating field demagnetization, low temperature demagnetization, which required liquid nitrogen, as well as high temperature demagnetization known as thermal. And this is what one of the instruments used inside the oven. So for my mapping GIS work, I used ArcMap to make a map of the grade of conformity. And so what I had to do first was download a whole bunch of maps from USGS, as well as the New Mexico Bureau of Geology and Mineral Resources. A lot of these maps were not geo-referenced. They either came as TIFFs that were geo-referenced or not. Most were not. And then I think I only had about 2 or 3 maps that had any GIS data. So I had to stitch all of these together. And then with that, I was able to create a trace of the gradient conformity by digitizing it and following the contact of where we knew the gradient conformity lies. And once I was done, I exported that and printed them. So for my results, first I have my structural data. I broke my sites into areas so that I could group a lot of the data together. So like I mentioned earlier, at the Upper Guyanas area, the Mineral Hill area, Santa Fe Ski Basin area, High Point area, and the Johnson's Mesa area. So right here is a table of the averages of the data that I was able to collect. And so overall, my fracture data gave me an orientation of 151 degrees as well as 61 degrees. And they are trending northwest-southeast and northeast-southwest. And so with that said, the reason why I have 2 directions is because I found out I had conjugate pairs of fractures. And so as you can see, this is one set of fractures, and then this is another set. And so most of them, as I've just mentioned, are trending towards the northwest, southeast, and then you have the other direction, northeast, southwest. And then here was my data for the foliations, cleavage, and isosceny. I did need to get, I think, a bigger data set because it was kind of inconclusive, but it is very important after a lot of the research I've done in the background to know. So yeah, you can't really see a pattern with these. But I still took measurements, and this is something that someone else could potentially build upon. And these are my Curie point results. So pretty much I just put what I got from my machine, and it gave me some curves, which I'm going to show you what one of the curves looks like for one of my samples. And what we do is you have a heating curve and a cooling curve, and with the red curve is what we read to find out the Curie temperature. And we find out the low temperature phase, which is usually indicated by like a little bump over here. And if you zoom into this, you can see it a lot better. And then that high peak on the red is known as the Hopkinson's peak. And so that is actually notes an increase in magnetic susceptibility. And then you have an inflection point, which is the temperature below the maximum curvature, which is going to be in this area right here. And so what we like, so for this experiment, we use the Hopkinson's peak as our preferred Curie point temperature. And I had probably only 2 nice Hopkinson's peak, the rest were suppressed. And right here is my paleomagnetic data that I got from my experiments. And as you can see, half of mine did not result in a stable endpoint behavior. And then the ones that did, I took the declination and I plotted them on a map to see if there was any direction. And if you're looking at it, it's the red arrows, there really is no pattern to the orientation of these, so it ended up being inconclusive. And this is an example of one of my samples of how we reduce the data and then get those directions. So another part of my thesis project was to make a whole bunch of maps of the gradient conformity. So right here you can see this is the gradient conformity trace over a topographic map. And if you were to come closer, you can kind of see that it follows a lot of the topography, which geology normally does do. And so how I got this was through, so how I got to this first was by stitching all of these geologic maps together. Most of them are at the scale of 1 to 24,000. There was one that was at a 62,500 scale, which was this set right here. And then we have the bigger geologic map over here, which is the 500,000 scale. And so for that area, there were none that were published or even drafted. So with that, I was able to trace the gradient conformity and plot it on the map so that we can see where else it lies to find possible future test sites. I do have 8 other maps here, and these are just blow-ups of different areas where the gradient conformity lies, and you're welcome to look at that at the end of my presentation. So my fractures yielded an average trend of 151 and 61 degrees, which is actually consistent with Laramide age structures according to Ursula and Koenig. And they have their Laramide age structures trending southeast to northeast, which is exactly what I had. The Curie point data shows that I do have magnetic minerals so that I can use them for paleomagnetic testing. My paleomagnetic data was inconclusive in having a single directional pattern. So that means that paleomagnetism is probably not the best test on these rocks. And it definitely won't give me an age of magnetization. However, paleomagnetism can neither conform nor negate if these sites have been affected by Laramide deformation. And then my gradient conformity maps help to visualize and locate future test sites and also provide a great outlet for other people to do further studies on the gradient conformity. So my fracture data concluded to be quite useful, but I also do think that more data could be collected, especially fracture foliation data, and that should be perpendicular to fault strengths so that we can get an accurate determination of how the foliation is changing. For my paleomagnetism, like I mentioned, just probably should not be used on these rocks, which is good for other people to know, because it does not yield directional pattern and the magnetic behavior is just not stable. My maps are a great tool, like I mentioned, for studying our future studies. And also I think that it's a great starting point for someone else to expand this map, not only to my field area, but everywhere that the gradient conformity is, so that we can have, a map to kind of reference for those kinds of studies. And going back to my hypothesis, I can say that I did not see any evidence for reorientation of folds or foliations. This needs a more in-depth study. Like I mentioned, I think the foliations would be great for me. However, I did have my fracture data, which those patterns did align with Laramide rocks throughout the Rocky Mountain areas. So then I can say that brittle deformation has affected the basement, but that ductile deformation we're still unsure about. And there are areas that have been deformed, and this is seen through the vertical relief of the basement. And even though there's a lot of resources out there that need to be, or that are in the cover rocks, it's still important to see to test if and how the basement was affected, because this might help with the migration of certain minerals or hydrocarbons. And this is just important on how to target that. Knowing how the crust deforms is also something that structural geologists and a lot of Rocky Mountain geologists are still trying to figure out today. And so, even though my study wasn't completely favorable in what I was testing, it is a great starting point for other people to build upon it, and it just provides that information so that they can use and see where to build upon for my projects. And then I would like to acknowledge Jennifer Lindline, who was my advisor. She helped me get through this, kept me on track, kept pushing me, so thank you. And also Joe Zabrowski. Not only has he helped me with my thesis, he's helped me just in my GIS career, also just kind of build that and make me a better mapper. And then Mike Petronis, you've also helped me, figure out how to deal with all this paleomagnetic stuff, working in my thesis, but also as one of my professors here in my geology career. And I'd also like to thank some of my field assistants, Daniel Rondon and Sarah Shields, for helping me out in the field, taking out crop measurements and whatnot, and collecting samples, of course. And then Billy for helping me core some of my samples. And of course, Roberta, I know she's not here today, but she's all just kind of helped making sure that I have all my paperwork in order and answered all my questions, helped me make copies from beginning till end. So wanted to thank her. And these are some of my references. And thank you. So no questions now, I'm just kidding.
And I just wanted to add to that Zakiya started our program a couple of years ago. She had a broad-based undergraduate geology degree, but she applied and started her graduate studies at a time that we were finishing up some studies, and some questions had come up while we were doing field work. This question about if there's all these folds in the cover rocks, what's happening to the basement, and so we developed this hypothesis and developed this study that was very, very, very much outside of her familiar, all of this structural geology. And then she had some GIS experience as an undergraduate, but with Joe's help in our GIS program, she really blossomed in that arena. And she also explored a completely different topic that was outside of her familiar, geophysics. So she's to be applauded for how much she's grown as a student and as a geologist over these past couple of years. Okay, so do you guys have some questions about the study?
So you have all those measurements with brittle deformation and things like that. Was there any previous, were there, let's say, another set of brittle fractures that accompanied that, so that you had the pre-Laramide fracturing and then after the Laramide brittle
So there was a lot of overprinting, say from the ancestral Rocky Mountains and whatnot. So there's definitely can be another set, and I know that at one point I think I was talking with Mike, and we kind of figured there was probably another set of data that had nothing to do with the Laramide.
Were you able to resolve that?
Not really. I think we can only say that, the data that I did collect, agreed with other Laramide structures, but, we just couldn't get an age for the rock, or, for the time of that deformation. So.
How does somebody get a date on brittle deformation?
I'm not too sure about that.
Okay, so how do people ascribe some structures to Mississippian versus some structures to Cretaceous?
I think
and ancestral Rocky Mountain versus Laramide. How do geologists stand there and say this fold happened during the ancestral, and others say this happened?
So I think there's definitely a lot of other dating tests out there that they do on the rocks first to find out the age, and then once they do that, then they try to see if the area has been affected by these different different orogenies or tectonic events that occur, so that you can kind of gauge and look at other studies also to help with that, to see if there's a set trend, if there's a pattern to those types of structures.
Right. A lot of times this is relative dating, or looking at patterns in the rocks, like the offset or breaks in the Permian stratigraphy versus the Cretaceous stratigraphy, or you had it in your introduction how some of the strata pinch or
Yes, Joe?
You mentioned that the grade of conformity appears to have, there's a topographic expression to that. Can you state whether that it tends to be expressed through ridges or drainages, or is there any kind of topography that seems to follow topographic type of features?
So honestly, I have not looked into that at all, but just when I looked at the map, when I was making it, I kind of noticed that it did kind of, I guess these rocks are a little bit more resistant, so it does, tend to follow, more ridges and whatnot. I would say it's a little bit on the, not quite into the valleys or ranges, but that's just from my quick observation, but I've not otherwise dwelled into it as much.
We can further observe that.
one of your concluding statements was that brittle deformation affected the basement, but Laramide ductile deformation doesn't seem to have. Can you explain to the audience the difference between brittle and ductile deformation?
Yeah, so brittle is like a complete breakage of something. So like that's when you see fractures or joints. Whereas ductile deformation is more of folding, so the rocks don't quite break. So I mean that's pretty much the basis of that.
We use a cracker cheese analogy, right? This is ductile deformation versus brittle.
Was there anything in the thermal remnant magnetism data that you collected to say at what was the temperature of magnetization that these rocks experienced? Like those arrows that you showed for the directional features. When is that? At what temperature is that imprinted?
I mean, we haven't really discussed that part because I know that my paleomag stuff has kind of been left to the end. So I don't know if Mike can help me out with that.
Well, you could get at to Jennifer's question. It's hard to get at the peak temperature of magnetization because you're growing autogenic minerals during whatever deformation, whether it's brittle or ductile. So you can't really get a temperature on these type of materials.
But I was going to say, growing those autogenic minerals, is that a temperature where rocks would be brittly or ductily?
No, I mean the Curie point
Do they
of
grow at low
hematite is
temperatures?
680 degrees, but you can grow hematite
Okay.
at 10 degrees.
Okay.
So they're not primary mineral phases. So it's hard to tease that out and connect it.
Okay.
But I do have a question. Because you're just being so mean.
Oh,
So you did, some of your sites didn't work, which is, we did talk about that, why they might not have worked, just because they just weren't amenable to the technique. Some of them worked, and they worked really well. So my question is that on those sites that actually worked, right, why is there such high dispersion between your individual locations? They work. They carry a primary remnants, or that's the wrong word to use. They carry a remnants.
I mean, they could potentially be affected by different. I mean, I guess something outside of Laramide orogeny that I wasn't working with. So that's definitely, I think, a possibility. So not it could mean that Laramide deformation wasn't affecting those particular rocks. Other than that, I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, so just a quick assessment of the sites that worked. What are their depositional ages? You got the grade of conformity, you have rock, you sampled sedimentary rocks and still flooded. And you did sample some of the gneiss.
The metamorphic, yeah. I was going to say, it was mainly the metamorphic basement. I didn't really grab too much in the cover. So, I don't know if metamorphism has anything to do, with that, but I'm assuming it does. So, I just don't know what, but...
I mean, you have how much time do you have for things to happen to these rocks? From the time they turned into gneisses to the time you decided to collect the block sample from them?
Not a lot. So, definitely other things have happened.
1.7 billion years. So the only thing we know what happened is from post ancestral rocky mountain time. So we've got roughly 1.4 billion years and we don't know what's going on.
So in the stuff that I'm familiar with, like a mineral like zircon, fluids don't affect the isotopes in that. So fluid events don't affect an age. But would fluid events affect the magnetic information that you're collecting?
I would think so, yeah, just because it's a different, or it's something else that's acting onto these rocks, and it's changing their composition. So, yeah.
I'm sitting here looking at a paper. The occurrence and origin of late Paleozoic remagnetization in sedimentary rocks in North America, which goes directly to what Jennifer's question was. There was a pervasive, we don't know why, still don't know why, this paper's 89, pervasive remagnetization event where it was all related to fluids. And it remagnetized an entire suite of sedimentary materials that are of post-late Paleozoic age. And part of that could have affected some of your Precambrian rocks.
You mentioned that your suggestions for future studies, or looking back, hindsight, collecting more structural data, especially of the fractures, that could tell you more about what happened. What was the N on most of your sites? The numbers of fractured orientations that you collected?
So they ranged from, I think, in the 20s to maybe about the 30s or 40s. So.
And what's the N? Okay, so 20s or 30s. What's the N on some of the papers that you've read when they measure fractures and then make a conclusion?
I think a lot of them were in the thousands. So yeah, definitely a lot more needed.
Okay. Any other questions, you guys? I think Mike and Joe and I may have more, but maybe in a more formal. So thank you guys for coming. We're gonna ask Zakiya some more questions about her thesis. We'll take probably anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. So you guys can take a break and then maybe come back and see if she still gets.
If I'm still alive.
Come back with a stretcher.
And please take the food with you so you guys can eat it.
If they start treating you bad, you better call me.
Yeah, but definitely take some of that food. Lots.